Imagine a storm tearing across the sky. Trees bend as if they might break, rain beats down so hard it blurs your vision, and the wind howls like it wants to rip the world apart. It feels wild, uncontrollable, terrifying. And yet, somewhere inside a small house, a single candle burns quietly. Its flame flickers but doesn't die, glowing steady and calm in the middle of chaos. That candle is what the human mind can be: still, balanced, and untouchable even when the world outside is falling apart. Most of us don't live like that. We let the smallest things disturb us. A stranger's rude remark can ruin an entire day. A traffic jam makes us feel powerless. A broken charger or a slow internet connection sends us spiraling with irritation. Instead of being like the candle, we allow every gust of wind to blow us out. Our peace depends on the world behaving exactly how we want, and because the world rarely does, we spend most of our lives frustrated and restless. But the ancient Stoics knew something different. They understood that peace isn't given by the outside world, it's created inside. The mind is like a muscle, it can be trained, strengthened, and made resilient. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome at a time of wars, plagues, and betrayal, didn't write in his journal about armies or politics. Instead, he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He knew the real battlefield wasn't outside the palace walls, it was inside his own thoughts. This truth isn't just philosophy, it's survival. Epictetus, once a slave, later a teacher, proved it. He had no control over his circumstances, yet he discovered freedom in mastering his response to them. He realized it isn't what happens that breaks us, it's how we handle it. That insight gave him peace even when he had nothing. Think of your own life. The last time you felt overwhelmed, was it because of some huge disaster? Or was it something small: your coffee order came out wrong, your phone froze, someone replied later than you expected? These little frustrations topple us because we've built a fragile rule inside: everything must go smoothly for me to be okay. And the world is relentless in proving that rule false. What if you didn't need perfection to feel at peace? What if your calm stayed steady even when plans collapsed, when someone was rude, when the unexpected happened? Imagine not being at the mercy of every little storm. That's what the Stoics trained for. They even practiced something called negative visualization, imagining the loss of things they loved: health, wealth, comfort, even loved ones. Not because they were gloomy, but because they wanted to be ready for anything. They didn't want life to break them when it shifted suddenly. Their peace was built on inner strength, not outer conditions. You can practice this yourself in small ways. When traffic builds up, when the computer crashes, when your plans fall apart, pause. Don't explode, don't spiral. Use that moment as training. Ask yourself, can I stay steady despite this? It's not about pretending the situation is good, it's about proving to yourself that you can remain upright even when things go sideways. Every time you choose composure over chaos, you build mental toughness. You become like that candle in the storm. Over time, something changes. You stop demanding that life be easy. You stop clinging to perfection. You still want good things, you still have dreams, but your peace no longer depends on whether the world cooperates. You carry freedom inside you, the freedom of knowing you can face whatever comes. This is what true calm is. Not the absence of problems, not the lucky days when everything flows your way, but the inner strength to stand steady when the storm hits. When you reach that state, the outside world loses its power over you. You're no longer controlled by broken plans, rude people, or shifting circumstances. You've built something stronger: peace that lives inside, untouchable, like a candle that refuses to go out no matter how hard the winds blow. The mind can feel like both a friend and an enemy. Some days it lifts you up with inspiration and ideas, but on most days it stirs up storms that don't even exist. It replays old mistakes as if they happened yesterday, it whispers that people are talking behind your back, it paints pictures of disasters that haven't even arrived, and it convinces you that you're not enough. What's worse is that we often believe these whispers as if they were absolute truth. Without realizing it, we become prisoners inside our own heads, reacting to illusions instead of reality. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled Rome during some of its darkest and most chaotic years, saw through this trap. In his private reflections, he wrote about how freeing it is to stop obsessing over what others are saying or doing and to focus only on your own choices and actions. He understood something most of us overlook: the mind is restless, and left unchecked, it invents problems that were never there to begin with. It's like an overzealous guard dog barking at every sound in the night, trying to protect you, but in doing so leaving you sleepless, exhausted, and on edge. The mistake most people make is taking every thought at face value. If the mind says, "They're judging me," we assume it's true. If it whispers, "Something bad is coming," we tense up and prepare for disaster. If it repeats a painful memory, we relive it again and again as if we're trapped in an endless loop. But what the Stoics realized is life-changing: you are not your thoughts. You are the observer, the witness, the deeper awareness that can watch these thoughts appear and pass. Try sitting quietly for half a minute, not to stop your thoughts but simply to watch them. You'll see how your mind hops from one thing to the next: an errand, a regret, a random idea, a sudden doubt, never resting, always chasing. The moment you notice this, you realize something powerful: you don't have to follow every thought. You can let them pass by, like clouds drifting across the sky. Some thoughts may be useful, but most are just noise. The Stoics practiced something they called objective representation. Instead of dramatizing events with emotion, they stripped them down to simple facts. Imagine your boss criticizes your work. The untrained mind jumps straight to, "They hate me. I'm failing. My career is in danger." But the Stoic response would be, "My supervisor gave me feedback." Same reality, but without the extra weight of panic and self-attack. By naming things as they are, they freed themselves from unnecessary suffering. When you start applying this, life feels lighter. The next time your brain spins a dramatic story, pause and ask, "What are the plain facts?" You'll be surprised at how often the stress comes not from reality but from the way your mind dressed it up. An anxious thought doesn't mean you're an anxious person. An angry thought doesn't mean you're cruel. A fearful thought doesn't mean something bad is about to happen. They are impulses, signals, passing clouds. You get to decide which ones to trust and which ones to ignore. The moment you stop blindly believing every thought, you reclaim your power. You're no longer a puppet pulled by strings of worry and fear. You become the director of your inner life, choosing what matters and letting go of the rest. That freedom is rare, but once you taste it, you'll never want to go back. And then there's the speed of our thinking. In today's world, everything is about faster responses, quicker results, instant gratification. We wear busyness like a badge of honor, but what it really hides is unrest. A racing mind doesn't prove strength, it signals disorder. The faster your thoughts spin, the more anxious and overwhelmed you feel. The Stoics knew this truth centuries ago. They saw that peace is tied to the pace of your mind. Seneca, who guided emperors and carried immense responsibility, reminded himself that rushing steals wisdom. He wrote about how each beginning requires the end of something else, pointing to the importance of living in rhythm, not in frenzy. Think back to a moment when you felt calm and grounded. Maybe it was watching a sunset, listening to the ocean, or sitting in silence after a long day. In those moments, your mind wasn't jumping from one worry to another. It wasn't calculating, stressing, or planning 10 steps ahead. It was steady, present, alive. That feeling isn't an accident, it's the natural state of a quiet mind. Most of us, though, train our brains to be spinning wheels. We wake up already multitasking, brushing our teeth while thinking about work, planning emails while rushing to the car, stressing about the day before it even begins. It feels normal because we've lived this way for so long, but it robs us of peace. The more the mind races, the less we truly live. The lesson the Stoics offer is simple but powerful: slow the mind, and you slow the chaos. Peace doesn't mean never facing problems. It means meeting them with clarity instead of panic. It means being the calm flame in the middle of a storm, steady no matter how wild the winds outside may be. And that kind of strength is available to anyone who chooses to practice it. Each morning, many of us start the day with the same ritual: breakfast in front of us, a phone glowing in our hand, and a restless mind already sprinting ahead to all the things we must do. We trick ourselves into believing this is efficiency, that doing more at once makes us more productive. But beneath the surface, it fractures our attention. Instead of feeding our focus, it scatters it, leaving us wired, anxious, and drained before the day has even begun. Just as the body requires sleep to repair and recover, the mind requires silence, stillness, and space to reset. Without giving it that, our nervous system stays locked in overdrive, always tense, always waiting, as though danger is right around the corner. That is why true calm feels so distant, because our mental engine is never allowed to shift down into rest. The ancient Stoics knew this truth long before modern psychology put it into words. They practiced something they called prohairesis, the art of intentional attention. For them, presence was not an abstract spiritual idea, it was a practical shield against chaos, a tool for clarity and stability. They trained themselves to fully engage with one thing at a time. Imagine a philosopher in the crowded streets of Rome, blocking out the noise of merchants, soldiers, and gossip, simply to feel the weight of a cup in his hand or the sound of his own breath. That was their discipline. And you can begin the same practice today. Choose a daily habit you normally rush through, maybe sipping coffee, maybe folding laundry, maybe walking across the room. For 1 week, do that single act at half your usual speed. Notice every detail. Feel the warmth of the cup, the rhythm of your steps, the texture of the fabric. Bring all your awareness to the moment. At first, unease will rise. Your mind, addicted to speed, will rebel. It will insist you are wasting time. But if you resist the urge to rush, something inside you begins to shift. Your thoughts come into sharper focus. Your emotions reveal themselves before they spiral out of control. You stop reacting automatically and instead respond with choice. Another practice they relied on was the breath. Marcus Aurelius, carrying the burden of an empire, often returned to his breath when his thoughts became scattered. Not as a ritual, but as a lifeline. Breath has a perfect rhythm, steady, balanced, always with you. Try it now. Inhale slowly to the count of 5, exhale slowly to the same count, and repeat 5 times. As you do, notice how your inner tempo slows. That is not magic. It is your body sending a message to your brain that you are safe, that there is no crisis. Slowing down your mind does not make you lazy. It makes you deliberate. It sharpens your choices, allows you to spot errors before they grow, and leaves you more satisfied with your effort. You do not achieve less, you achieve with greater clarity. And in that slowing, a deeper calm emerges, not the shallow distraction we often mistake for peace, but the kind of quiet that grows from presence and intentionality. Failure, too, was something the Stoics approached differently. From childhood, most of us are taught to fear it, to see it as shame, to treat it as evidence of inadequacy. We are trained to hide it, to avoid it at all costs. But to the Stoics, failure was never a verdict, it was information. It was a teacher with lessons only visible to those willing to look closely. Epictetus, who had once lived as a slave before becoming one of the greatest Stoic thinkers, reminded his students that no one can learn what they think they already know. To him, failure was not an enemy but feedback, a mirror showing us the gaps in our understanding. Without it, we remain trapped in illusions of comfort. With it, we are forced to grow. Think of a child learning to walk. They fall again and again, dozens of times a day. Yet not once do they conclude that walking is impossible. They rise, they wobble, they fall, and they rise again. Falling is not failure, it is practice. But as adults, we forget this truth. One failed relationship convinces us we are unworthy of love. One mistake at work makes us believe we are incompetent. One rejection convinces us to stop trying altogether. The issue is not the fall, it is the story we tell ourselves about the fall. What if failure is not proof of weakness but a signal pointing toward growth? What if it is simply data, showing us what does not work so we can discover what does? Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal, war, illness, and unbearable loss, yet he trained himself to see every obstacle as an opportunity. In his meditations, he wrote, "The obstacle to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He did not deny hardship. He transformed it. What tried to break him became the very thing that strengthened him. This is not blind optimism or toxic positivity. It is grounded wisdom. Character is not sculpted in comfort, it is forged in the fire of challenge. Every time you rise from a setback with clarity instead of self-pity, you gain strength. Every time you refuse to let a stumble define you, you prove that you are more than your circumstances. Start with the small things. If dinner burns, do not curse yourself, learn something about timing. If you are rejected from a job, ask what skill you need to sharpen. If you say the wrong thing in a conversation, let it teach you the art of patience or listening. Each stumble is a chance to practice resilience, to test your ability to adapt and refine. The most accomplished people in history failed more often than most. What set them apart was not perfection but persistence. They fell, they studied the fall, and they rose stronger each time. Their greatness came not from avoiding mistakes but from learning faster than they fell. They understood the truth the Stoics carried: failure does not define you. It refines you. Imagine starting your day with a full tank of invisible fuel. This fuel isn't money or time, it's your energy, the mental and emotional strength that decides how you think, how you feel, and how you act. Every conversation, every worry, every thought takes something from that tank. Most people don't realize this, so they spend their fuel recklessly. They waste it on endless scrolling, arguing over things that don't matter, replaying embarrassing memories, or obsessing over what others might be thinking. By midday, they're already exhausted, scattered, and wondering why life feels so heavy. The truth is, your energy is sacred. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, wrote, "It's not that life is short, it's that we waste much of it." He wasn't just talking about minutes slipping away, he was pointing out how much of ourselves we hand over to meaningless distractions and worries. Picture someone who spends hours each week in pointless arguments or endless debates online. They walk away not with answers, but with less peace, less clarity, less energy. They've made withdrawals from a bank account that only rest can refill, and rest is something they rarely allow themselves. The Stoics believed in protecting this energy by focusing only on what truly mattered, what was within their control, and what aligned with their values. Everything else they refused to carry. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire and faced constant wars, betrayal, and pressure, could have drowned in chaos. Instead, he trained himself to remain steady in the present moment. He knew that wasting energy on gossip, on fear of the future, or on defending his pride would weaken him. His strength came from choosing where his attention went, like a guardian protecting something priceless. Think of your own life. Imagine a week where you tracked every rise and fall in your energy. You'd probably notice that certain habits drain you without mercy: doom scrolling through bad news, trying to control someone else's behavior, juggling 5 tasks at once, or overcommitting until your schedule leaves no room to breathe. On the other hand, there are things that quietly refill you: walking outside, creating something with your hands, spending time in honest conversations, or simply breathing slowly and deeply. These are not luxuries, they are fuel stops. Without them, you burn out. And then there's another trap that quietly drains energy: the need to always be right. Most people walk into disagreements like warriors, determined to win. They argue not to learn but to prove, not to connect but to dominate. But what happens? Instead of understanding, there's distance. Instead of peace, there's more tension. Instead of saving energy, they waste it defending an ego that only grows hungrier the more it's fed. The Stoics saw through this. They understood that insisting on being right often comes from fear, not strength. Marcus Aurelius, with all the power of an emperor, could have silenced anyone who opposed him. Yet in his private writings, he reminded himself to focus on what was good in others, to listen, to understand, and to find common ground. That was discipline, not weakness. Think about the last argument you had. Was it really about the issue, or was it about protecting your pride? Imagine 2 friends sharing coffee. One insists they remember a story correctly, the other refuses to back down. The warmth of the moment disappears, replaced by cold silence. In chasing the feeling of being right, both lose something much more valuable: the connection between them. The more you cling to being right, the more you lose touch with people and with yourself. You stop listening, you stop learning, and you end up isolated. But when you let go of that need, something shifts. You enter conversations with curiosity, not combat. You ask questions instead of loading weapons. You protect your energy by choosing peace over pride. And paradoxically, this makes you stronger, not weaker. This is the wisdom the Stoics carry through centuries. Your energy is your life force. Spend it with care. Guard it like treasure. Don't waste it on noise, on arguments, on proving yourself to people who don't matter. Don't let pride rob you of peace. When you protect your energy and let go of the constant fight to be right, you begin to move through life differently. You stand taller, breathe easier, and feel lighter. You learn that true strength is not about controlling the world or winning every debate. It's about mastering yourself, choosing where your energy flows, and refusing to let it be drained by things that don't deserve it. There was a man who lived most of his life believing that strength meant never backing down. At home, at work, even with strangers, he felt compelled to defend every opinion, to correct every mistake, to prove that he was right. His voice was sharp, his words quick, and his pride strong. People often grew quiet around him, not because he had convinced them, but because they felt shut out. He thought this silence meant victory, but in truth it was distance. Every conversation felt like a duel, and though he won many, he carried the invisible wounds of tension, stress, and loneliness. One evening he came home from a long day of arguments at work. He was already tired when his teenage son sat across the table, frustrated with a poor grade on a project. Instead of listening, the man launched into a lecture about effort, discipline, and responsibility. His son listened for a moment, then lowered his eyes and said softly, "Dad, you don't actually hear me, you just want to win." Those words pierced deeper than anything he had heard all day. He saw in his son's eyes not defiance but sadness, and in that moment, he realized he had confused control with connection. Later that night, restless and unable to sleep, he picked up a book that had been gathering dust on his shelf, Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. Flipping through the pages, his eyes caught a line, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. For I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone." He closed the book and whispered to himself, "Maybe the real strength isn't proving myself right. Maybe it's being open enough to see where I might be wrong." The next morning, something in him shifted. At work, when a colleague challenged his idea, he felt the old instinct to strike back, but instead he paused. He leaned in and said, "Help me understand your point better." To his surprise, parts of what his colleague said were valuable, and together they built a stronger solution than either could have managed alone. Later at home, when his wife voiced her frustration about something small, he felt his pride rising, but he caught himself. Instead of defending, he replied calmly, "I see it differently, but I respect how you feel." For the first time in weeks, she smiled at him warmly, and he realized how much peace could be saved by not needing to win. Over the next months, he began practicing this more often. When disagreements arose, he asked questions instead of firing back. When friends or co-workers had views different from his, he listened with curiosity instead of waiting to counter. He discovered that people began to open up more around him. They leaned in, shared freely, and respected him more, not because he had silenced them, but because he had made them feel heard. Conversations that once ended in tension now ended with understanding, even if they didn't fully agree. He also noticed something deeper happening inside himself. For years, his moods had been at the mercy of circumstances. A success at work filled him with pride, but a setback left him bitter. Praise lifted him high, but criticism cut him down. His sense of worth was like a boat tossed on the waves of other people's opinions. But the Stoics taught him another way, that true peace comes from within, from living by values rather than chasing validation. He began to ground himself in patience, honesty, and humility. When things went wrong, he reminded himself, "This doesn't change who I am." When people criticized him, he asked, "Is there truth here I can use?" And when he succeeded, he enjoyed it, but didn't let it define him. Slowly, he discovered a calm he had never known before. One evening, while walking alone in the park, he thought about Epictetus, who had lived as a slave yet found a freedom no master could touch. If such a man could claim peace within his own mind, then surely he too could stop being chained by his ego. He realized that strength was not the ability to win every battle, but the ability to stay steady when no battle was needed at all. He no longer measured his life by how often he proved others wrong. Instead, he measured it by how well he lived his principles, how well he loved his family, and how fully he could stay calm in a storm. Arguments no longer controlled him, outcomes no longer defined him, and the opinions of others no longer dictated his worth. For the first time, he felt free not because the world had changed, but because he had stopped giving away his peace. And in that freedom, he discovered a quiet kind of power. The power to connect instead of control. The power to listen without losing himself. The power to stand steady in a world that will always be full of storms. He was a man who carried an empire on his shoulders, who lived through betrayal, war, and grief, and yet reminded himself daily that very little was needed to live a happy life. He understood that joy was never hidden in crowns, armies, or the praises of men, it was always found within his own thoughts. What gave him strength was not the world around him, but the way he chose to see and respond to it. Imagine beginning the day not by rushing into the noise of the world but by pausing for a few quiet minutes. You breathe deeply. Reflect on the person you wish to be, and remind yourself of the values that matter most. Gratitude fills your chest, and you step into the day with a compass set firmly inside you. When the storms of life come, as they always do, that inner compass keeps you from being pulled away. And when night falls, before sleep takes you, you review your day. You ask yourself if you lived as the person you wanted to be, or if anger, fear, or distraction pulled you off course. These simple moments of reflection begin to shape your character more than applause, wealth, or status ever could. Slowly, you stop measuring yourself by what others say or do, and instead by whether you acted with patience, integrity, and dignity. Life does not spare anyone from disruption. There will always be challenges, disappointments, and conflicts that arrive without warning. But here lies the choice that changes everything. You can ask yourself, how can I respond in a way that honors the person I want to become? With that question, you are no longer a puppet jerked by circumstance, you become the author of your reactions. As the days pass, something begins to shift. You realize that everything you had been searching for outside of peace, strength, joy, confidence, was within you all along. They were never rewards to be chased, but seeds to be cultivated. You stop running after them, and instead, you grow them. You are no longer like a leaf tossed helplessly in the wind, you become like a rooted tree, unmoved, unshaken, steady in every storm. From this place, a new kind of freedom emerges. Freedom from the pressure to control everything around you. Freedom from the roller coaster of other people's praise or criticism. Freedom to live as your truest self in a world that constantly demands you wear a mask. But knowledge alone does not create transformation. The Stoics believed philosophy without action was only noise. It is not about reading their words, it is about living them. Some days, you will succeed with ease. Other days, you will forget, stumble, and fall into old patterns. That is not failure, it is the path. Growth is not a straight line but a steady walk, step after step. Choose one principle that resonates most with you and live it for a month. Let it shape your choices, your voice, your reactions. With time, your mind rewires itself, your spirit steadies, and you begin to meet life with a new kind of strength. It is not about avoiding difficulty but facing it with calm. Not about escaping pain but walking through it with courage. The Stoics themselves did not live easy lives. They endured plagues, exile, betrayal, and loss, yet they found peace not in escaping hardship but in their ability to respond wisely to it. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, the universe is change. Life is what our thoughts make it. Those words remain just as true now. Your life so far has been built on the thoughts you have carried. If you want to live differently, you begin not by waiting for the world to change but by reshaping the way you think. Not tomorrow, not someday, but now, in this very moment, with this very breath. Every time you choose calm instead of panic, clarity instead of confusion, strength instead of weakness, you become more of who you were always meant to be. That is the Stoic way, not the easiest path, but the most rewarding. It is a journey that begins here and now, and with each step, you build the unshakable calm that no storm, no betrayal, no loss can ever take away.